Prowers County Commissioners, we'd like to thank you for attending today. I know we all have some very big concerns of what the U.S. Department of Energy is wanting to do with the Southwest corridor. It's really concerned of affecting private property rights in a domain. There's just a lot of issues that we don't like. We fight for your private property rights, and this is a way to, it seems, to destroy those. So we've got some people online. We've reached out to several people and they have sent letters in. So I'm going to turn it over to Don at this point in time. He's going to do some introductions, and we're going to, McKenna Farley's going to be on first.
Yes, McKenna, are you with us? So, Commissioners, McKenna is with Congresswoman Bobert's office. They have been following this item closely, and they're working on some of the areas they can address it. So, if McKenna would like to unmute herself, we can have her make any comments that she would like. We also have Jordan Jansen, who just joined us from Congressman Crank's office. So we'll start with McKenna. McKenna, go ahead. Oh, we do not have sound, McKenna. Can you hang on just a minute to make sure it's not on our? McKenna, would you try that again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Crank it up, crank it.
Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all for having me this morning. Just to introduce myself, my name is McKenna Farley. I am Congresswoman Lauren Bobert's Southern Colorado Regional Director. And I believe we should have our Regional Director, Raven Finnegan, on here in a couple minutes as well. Just wanted to update you on some of the items that the Congresswoman has already done in regards to opposing this NIETC designation. Last night, the Congresswoman sent a letter to Secretary Chris Wright with the Department of Energy, urging the Department of Energy to reconsider and halt further actions on the current NIETC designations on Colorado, sorry, my phone is going off, initiated here in southern Colorado by the previous administration, and urging immediate action and attention on this pressing matter. Additionally, we were also able to have the Congresswoman in the big fence post posted this morning, explaining this to all of our constituents and urging public comment on this matter. And I have Drew here too, who is our Deputy Chief of Staff, if he would like to add anything as well.
Awesome, thanks, McKenna. I think the last thing I would add is just put out a press release to our constituents. We're going to have it on the website, our social media networks as well. It does have a link for folks to submit public comment before the deadline on Friday. Obviously, we'd love to have it extended. We're doing everything in our power right now to make that happen. I believe the Congressman is going to actually be at a meeting that Secretary Wright will be attending tomorrow. I believe she'll look to bring that up, bring this topic up as well. But certainly we're doing everything we can to, at the very least, extend the public comment deadline, but ultimately move this project stop.
Thank you guys. Mr. Jansen, I know you were mainly here to take notes as Congressman Crane is on natural resources. Did you have anything you wanted to add from his office?
Nope, I'm here to just take notes and to make sure I get more LA, so you know everything that's going on. We have some questions later on, but
Okay, and we have somebody with a phone number or is called in at 207. I am not sure who that individual is.
Hi, this is Lori Bird, Congresswoman, Chief of Staff. I'm helping the Congresswoman lobby now so she can have a moment to speak to everybody as well. about that winter, but
Okay. And it looks like we have Congresswoman Bogart with us.
Yeah, sorry, I had a link for the next meeting and not this one, so apologize about that.
Congresswoman, we are in our county commissioner meeting with, quite a few individuals from the community with concerns on NITC. Please share with us where you're at in Washington on this topic.
Yes, so I wanted to join you all today to let you know that our new Secretary of Energy, Chris Rice, will be in DC tomorrow, and we'll be at the Capitol, and I will be meeting with him. I have also sent the Secretary a letter opposing this and asking for him to put an immediate stop to this massive land grab that certainly infringes on our private property rights in eastern Colorado. So as many of y'all know, the NIETC was part of the Biden administration's top-down approach to pushing federal control of energy infrastructure, and they really did this without balancing the rights of private property owners and and even when it comes to this, there was opportunity for little to no input or with public comment. As many of y'all know on the call, public comment ends on Friday, and I'm hoping that Secretary Wright, as a fellow Coloradan, would take swift action on this and prevent this from going forward. So, you know, I hope that you're encouraging folks to join the process for the public comment. Until then, I'm doing what I can here, and like I will be talking with the Secretary tomorrow. And if there are any additional questions that you guys have for me in regards to that, I hope you've all seen the letter that I sent to the Secretary. I think Congressman Jeff Crank from the 5th District wanted to join this call as well. He may at a later time, but he's supportive of this, of our efforts to stop this NIETC. So if there's any questions you have, or like have me on the call, I'm happy to have those conversations. I'm also meeting with a woman who is involved in stopping this effort in Kansas, which is great for them, but obviously it pushed it west to our side. So I'm going to hear from her directly on some of the information that she used to prevent this from going forward, and then hopefully, you know, if there's something new, we can utilize that as well. But I think this administration being more in favor of our energy policies and private property rights, that this shouldn't be too big of a fight.
Thank you, Congressman. I do want, if you do have a minute, I know you have a busy schedule, but I would like to ask a question, allow the commissioners to ask any questions they may have. From what I've seen so far, it looks like some of the surrounding states have been successful in putting mostly a stop completely to this project in their areas. Do you feel that we're on the right track to have the same success in this area?
Yes, and so obviously nothing is guaranteed, but like I said, having a favorable administration towards our policy agenda certainly helps. Having Secretary Chris Rice as a Colorado native leans in our favor. I think that'll be a huge benefit to us. But I mean, anything that we could do to protect the affected approximately 325,000 acres in Becca and Prowers and in Kiowa, I'm here to try to prevent that as much as possible. I have great connections all throughout the administration. Like I said, I'll speak with the Secretary in person tomorrow. The letter's already been sent to him. OMB has received the letter, and I received feedback from OMB yesterday. They were excited about the letter and didn't see any problems there. But obviously, we want to prevent stripping rural landowners of decision-making authority over this kind of stuff. So I am optimistic, and if this was last year, I would tell you to hold on.
comment period is closing on the 14th. The real concern is how is the best way to get this, comments to them, at a quicker response time? And who do we also need to reach out to have those responses sent in?
So I think the link for the public comment is your best route, to offer that. And if anybody needs that, we can provide it, or hopefully y'all are passing it around. If I can put that up on social media, to get more community buy-in, I'm happy to do that. But it does end on the 14th, and so the more voices we have, the better. And, I don't know what else to add to that, other than we need public input. I'm talking to the administration and doing everything on that end.
We need a link to that. Do we have it?
We can find that.
We have it. Okay.
Hey, Ron, through your section of the Congressman's office, I'm gonna email you that link right now. In the press release we sent out probably about a half an hour ago, we included that link for all the comments as well. So we'll make sure that all commissioners have that. We'll also get that posted on the Congressman's social media accounts today, making sure that everybody has access to that.
Thank you, Drew. We did get your letter this morning, and we are going to be passing a resolution that we will include you guys on and get that to you hopefully this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning. Commissioners, do you have any other questions?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you for your help.
Yes, and also, just to reiterate, I'm speaking with someone from Kansas who was instrumental in putting a stop to this, and so our neighboring states have been successful, and so any extra, tools that I can put in my toolbox and get some things on, I'm happy to use those, and just see what was the best route there, but again, having a favorable administration, it shouldn't be too difficult of a fight. And know that I won't back off on it if it is a difficult fight.
Again, thank you very much, Congresswoman. I know you're busy, and it means a lot to this group that you took the time to chat with us this morning. So thank you, and we look forward to more communication on this.
Yes, and I want to thank you all. I'll be down in Prowers at some point. Be gracious with my schedule. We are in Washington, D.C. more than I have ever been in D.C. So I'm working hard to come back on the weekends. We have 2 and 3 day weekends, and I'm trying to get all throughout our 21 counties. So if you don't see me right away, don't feel too left out. But you're welcome to reach out to me, to Drew, anyone on my team. We have McKenna Farley here on the call, and she's there in Castle Rock. And so we have folks all over who are ready to help, and anyone who needs my personal cell phone number, you're welcome to reach out to me, and then I'll see you in person as soon as possible.
Thank you. McKenna and Jordan, we're going to have some community discussion presentations coming up right now. If you guys want to stay on the line, we'll let you sit in on that. And if at any point you do want to add comments, that's fine with us. Commissioners, if you're okay, we'll go ahead and have Mr. and Ms. Hughes come up and give the discussion that they've been giving in other areas.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. My wife Patty and I are really excited about what we see here, as far as the growth of what's going on, and we really appreciate you all inviting us up to share what we learned about this, and to help you all, and you all help us. What we have some. I'm sorry we don't have packets for everybody, but we're passing out to the commissioners here, and in there, I can show you a little bit where the link is. But the first thing I'd like to do is talk about the cover document there, the first document. And don't worry, I'm not going to talk through the whole thing, but we want to hit the high points. I think you all are on the right track. Everybody is what I hear this morning, and Congresswoman Woolward, am I saying that right? her letter and everything. We really appreciate that. Of course, we're from New Mexico, but we're on the other end of the corridor. We're all in this together. So, just really quickly, as far as I won't be real quick, but the stated purpose of the National Interest Electric Transmission Corridor, that's on that front page. Basically, we call this the NIETC. It's a geographic area where the DOE has said they have identified present or expected electrical problems. Expected is an important thing to remember about that word. Capacity constraints or congestion that adversely affects consumers. What they mean by adversely affects higher prices, lack of power, that kind of thing. So the designation identifies where they think this transmission development needs to happen, or alternative non-transmission solutions. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. What does that mean? If you look at the map right in the middle of the page, on the right-hand side, that was the Phase 2 NIETC in our area, Colorado, New Mexico. And of course, you see where it goes into Texas and Kansas and Oklahoma. And it's already been mentioned this morning, Kansas and Texas were successful in stopping it. And they did it by what you all are doing, basically. They made comments, they pushed back, they got involved, they learned about this thing, and they pushed back. And at the end of, Phase 2, after that happened, we're going to Phase 3, they're no longer there because they did push back. I think Colorado and New Mexico, we're kind of looked at as maybe easier pickings than they are. You know, we're rural areas, we're just not a lot of people. We're out here trying to take care of our cattle and chop ice and whatever we need to do. And we don't read the Federal Register. So the map on the left-hand side, that's where we are now. This is Phase 3. And Phase 3 is a 5 to 15 mile wide corridor that goes all the way, actually, Kiowa County, all the way down into southern New Mexico. Total length is about 670 miles, 5 to 15 miles wide. That's a lot of territory. One other thing I might mention about these maps and the phases, they say that Phase 3, this is what they're looking at now, but they say they reserve the right to revisit other areas, whatever that revisit means. So they're reserving that right. Now, there's power given to in the NIETC, and the power is over state sovereignty and private property. That's what they've been given. To summarize it real quickly, an NIETC designation gives FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the jurisdiction to approve transmission line after a state or local authority has not approved it. State authority can say absolutely not. The FERC can say yes. And where that comes about, it's a little bit of background on how we got there. In 2005, the Federal Powers Act, or FPA, authorized the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that's FERC, to issue permits for electric transmission facilities. Now, what authority did they actually have? Well, the important one is that if a state siting authority has denied a permit, or has not acted on an application for over 1 year, then FERC can step in and issue the permit. You know, if the state ignores it, doesn't issue it for whatever reason, FERC can issue a permit. In 2021, their authority was changed, was augmented, and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which has been mentioned this morning, amended the Federal Power Act to give FERC siting authority. Again, when the state did not do anything for a year, they had that authority. But what's been changed was, or if the state has denied an application, the state says no, FERC can say yes. That's a change. And another major change is the eminent domain. The Jobs Act grants an acquire the necessary right-of-way by eminent domain. If negotiations with the landowner says no, if those fail, well then the private or property transmission developer gets the right of eminent domain over your land. Now, was there a question? Did I hear? No, okay. So what you have here as private landowners, the federal agency and a transmission developer alliance is what the private property owner is up against in negotiation or in court action if that becomes necessary. If you look on that second page, there's a schematic shown there. And what this shows is that the development in a NIETC is really developer driven and DOE coordinated to save time if you look at the schematic. I might note here that in phase 2, the Farm Bureaus from California to Illinois, they protested this development by a letter just pointing out how this is development driven and not need driven. See, if you look at the schematic, the GDO, which is the Grid Deployment Office, they say they will coordinate and expedite federal authorization and environmental reviews to site electric transmission facilities. And what they're saying is that they'll do a single environmental review. That document will be prepared as the basis for all federal decisions after that. And binding schedules will be set up for completion of all the federal authorizations. In other words, they will decide what reviews are needed. They'll do one overall review, and that'll be it. So there won't be piecemeal or things that come up, but this will be one review. Another thing that's driving this is DOE money is also a resource for developers. The DOE is providing what they call key market support via it's called Transmission Facilitation Program, or TFP. And they say to help overcome financial hurdles that usually slow down or prevent the successful development of large-scale transmission lines. So what they've done is they've authorized that the DOE can borrow up to $2.5 billion, and they can divvy this out in 3 different ways. One of them is what they call capacity contracts. We didn't know what that was until we started digging into it. But what a capacity contract is that with eligible projects, whatever transmission line they choose, DOE would serve as an anchor customer to buy up to 50% of the planned line rating for up to 40 years. 50% for 40 years. That doesn't mean they're going to buy the power. What it means is they'll pay for the power that's not generated to that rate, whatever that power would be. Second thing is loans from DOE, which is pretty straightforward. And the third thing is what they call participation in public-private partnerships within a national interest electric transmission corridor. Now, they aren't clear what that is. What is a public-private partnership? We really don't know exactly what that means. But to me, the point is here is the DOE claims a need for these transmission lines, but then offers itself as an anchor customer for up to 50% of the line rating for 40 years because the developer lacks other customers. There aren't any customers out there. So what's happened here at the same, if this goes in, at the same time, your private land with the NIETC loses value. If somebody else has control over your land, what's the saleability of that land? And the viability as a farm, a ranch, business, or even a place to live. So owners can lose financial security, the ability to support their family, and their future. And that's really important to us. And some of these effects are immediate, like the financial loss of value of your land, loss of value, that happens right away. And who wants to buy or participate in a farm or ranch that the rancher doesn't have control over what happens to that land? The value goes this way for sure. And as infrastructure is built, let the land of course, it builds and land users, it changes, and owners can be displaced. And actually, the impact of these developments go offline. When you think about it, you know, if the productivity of the area goes down, less income, less just gross income, fewer people, less tax base, communities suffer, less people buying groceries, that happens. So that's why the DOE offers money to communities that is designed to what they call overcome state or local challenges. Let me tell you what a little bit we know about that. In the town of Warrensburg, which is in the southwest of Mexico, the DOE had to give $1.8 million to the town for community development so that they would not oppose a major utility scale transmission line going through. So they basically offered a bribe and they took it. Okay, so what could be developed in a corridor? Now, we've talked about transmission lines, and that's what DOE talks about, but it's much, much more than that. They say, you know, the expected transmission capacity, all that. They talk about poles and wires, which you'd expect for a transmission line, but these are not just your single pole electric lines. These are high voltage, high capacity, high towers, and multiple lines. They can stack them in there if they want to. And then they talk about transmission infrastructure. They talk about what that might be, but they talk about two other things that are very important. Energy storage solutions or other solutions. Now, what are other solutions? In listening to a DOE, sorry my glasses keep falling down, in listening to the DOE on the Zoom meeting in Clay County, they mentioned hydrogen power, for one thing. And we don't know, but we are also concerned that it might entail either nuclear power or nuclear waste can be included. The reason we're worried to think about that is that the president of the Mexico cattle growers has said that the NIETC in New Mexico goes over a proposed nuclear waste site. So why would it do that if there weren't other things involved? And then also go back a little bit to the energy storage solutions. This means batteries. And if you've listened to the news the last few years, these batteries routinely catch on fire, and they're dangerous. They spontaneously start burning, and they can't be put out with water, they're too hot. All you can really do is manage around them. And so you think about these rural areas where this corridor is proposed. You know, what about your volunteer fire department, your first responders, you know, this happens. Where are they going to get the water? Where are they going to get the equipment? Where are they going to get the training? None of that's been put into here, but that's one of the things that you may face as a county. If you look at the bar chart at the bottom, I'm sorry that you haven't seen this, but when you look at the bar chart at the bottom of the page, what that shows is that electricity demand has not changed since about 2005 till the present. And so the demand has not significantly increased. So what this shows is that this massive corridor is not really being driven by consumer need or harm, as they say, but it's being driven by government policy. In fact, I mentioned that Zoom meeting in Clay County with the DOE. They said in that meeting that the DOE is taking a very broad view of consumer harm. It actually is. So we don't know. That could go a long ways. We really don't know what they're saying. Okay, there's some policies that have driven this to this point, the establishment of these NIETCs. One of them is a bipartisan infrastructure deal. This came from a White House brief that was put out in 2021. What this deal did, it made available $65 billion for investment for various things, and it includes the largest investment in clean energy transmission and grid in American history. This is the largest investment in this in history. And what they're doing is they talk about some other things, but they're accelerating our transition to a zero emission economy. And that zero emission economy is slated to begin by the past administration by 2035. That's only 10 years off. Think of the changes that they're proposing. And then what are the potential NIETCs? Again, this is a White House announcement back in 21. The administration is committed to using every tool at our disposal to accelerate progress on transmission permitting and financing and build a clean energy future. That's what this is all about. Okay, if an NIETC designation is put in place, it unlocks what they call federal financing tools. What that means, there are two pots of money. There's $2.5 billion in one pot and $2 billion in another. Now the 2.5 can be spent almost anywhere, as we understand it, but the $2 billion can only be spent in an NIETC, and that's part of the driving force behind this. They have this money to spend. And I don't know how you're set up here in Colorado, but in New Mexico we have a government, it's called a quasi-government transmission infrastructure we call the New Mexico Renewable Energy Transmission Authority, or RETA. And they commented on phase 1, we're in phase 3 of the 4-phase project. But their comments on phase 1 is that they said private and state land should be utilized for the expansion of utility-scale wind and solar projects because they are the most accessible land and grid proximity sites. Okay, this is where private land, at least in New Mexico and of course in the DOE. And they go on to say, private and state lands, which have fewer permitting requirements, are developed well before federal and tribal lands, which are subject to rigorous environmental review requirements. Therefore, this costs the developer less to target private land, fewer requirements. They go on to say that they call the use of private and state land a least regrets approach, at least for the developer. That costs us much. So one other factor that RETA has put out is that they anticipate the economic benefit for the developer to develop these lines to have a return on investment of 9 to 38% for the for-profit developer. That's a pretty good return. And then those are good profits for them, but what can happen to the landowner's financial stability if it goes in? I mean, it goes. So, turning to the next page, how could the Southwest NIETC impact the ag economy? Now, Patty put together from the 2022 USDA Census some figures for both Colorado and New Mexico. So if you look at this table, in Colorado, now these are the whole counties that are affected because you can't really parcel out the 5 mile. But for the 3 counties in Colorado that are affected by this corridor, the annual value of ag products, this is just ag products, is over $640 million. And the value of land and buildings, the infrastructure for ag, this is ag alone, is about $4.5 billion with B. That's a lot. That's a lot to put at risk. The total for both states, Colorado and New Mexico, the annual value of ag products is about $2.5 billion, and the value of land and buildings is over $14.5 billion. This is a major investment. We're a very productive group. We don't think about that too much. And even for Prowers County alone, the effect or the value annually for ag products is $429 million, a little over, and the investment in ag land and buildings is $1.1 billion. And this doesn't include any tourism or anything else, any other sources of income. That's just ag. But all these other sources, revenue sources, tourism, they would certainly be affected by this NIETC if it does go in. Okay, during that, Kansas was mentioned by the Congresswoman, and the Kansas during the phase 2, they asked a group called the Landmark Resource Firm to look into this, and they issued a white paper. And I think there's a copy of that white paper in this handout, isn't it? Or is there? I don't remember. Anyway, this is what they say. Would this reduce consumer harm? Is one of our questions. So what they said proved unprofitable and thus requires significant subsidies and allowances by government actors, which manipulates the market order by directing investments away from efficiency and imposes excess costs on consumers and ratepayers in both in the short and long term. That's in economic language, but you get it what it is. There will be excess costs, quite likely. So the reality is that an NIETC, for the sake of renewable energy, does not reduce consumer harm. That was their conclusion. Okay, this was issued in 2021. The FERC's authority has ever been tested. They say that the citing responsibilities, this was an amendment to the FPA, they say it questionably expanded DOE's authority to establish national corridors to include geographic areas that are expected to experience. The expected was added in 2021. In other words, they're allowing the FERC and the DOE to speculate with our land. Maybe down the road, might need it, maybe not. So this was new in 2021. They also addressed the fallout from the NIETC. And what they said is, and it's been mentioned this morning already, it is concerning that the Department of Energy wants to cite massive transmission corridors in order to accommodate executive climate policy objectives, and these were established actually by international conventions. So, and the government's lack of disclosure relating to the implications of accomplishing this policy is in violation of the primary intent of the rule of law and due process, without which the individual citizen is left exposed to unrestrained power. And I think we've all felt that. We've all been caught like deer in the headlights on this thing. So that the combination of lands needed for renewables, transmission corridors, and the 30 by 30 conservation initiative will remove other productive uses from a substantial amount of U.S. lands, having significant impacts on economic development, and having massive implications for property rights and reliable affordable energy. That was their take on what the NIETC would like to do. Okay, then the question, we go back to, again, this addresses our New Mexico RETA. Are they speculating with our land? Well, we called the director of the New Mexico RETA and actually asked two simple questions. One was, do you need a customer to build for renewable energy prior to building the transmission line? Simple answer is no, you don't. The other question was, do you need a source for renewable energy prior to building a transmission line? Again, the answer is no, you don't need it. So, and remember that the DOE says there is a geographic area expected for capacity constraints. So they're basically are speculating that there will be a need, but the corridor has an immediate impact on us as private property owners. So we've come to this conclusion, looking at all of this, that in New Mexico there is an abundant, reliable, and affordable electricity we already have. But there are no stranded renewable energy projects. Because right now there are actually 5 ongoing transmission line projects to service areas that are putting in renewable energy. This really isn't about transmission lines or putting in what you would think of for servicing renewable energy. A national interest corridor is really not needed to mitigate constraints or congestion. It is not necessary for the development of renewable energy, and it does not address consumer harm, but we think in fact could add to it higher costs, those kinds of things. So this overlay by the federal government of a heavy industrial zone in service of a DOE policy that does not promote the health, safety, and welfare of private citizens in its path. I want to emphasize that heavy industrial zone. We've come to the conclusion, and after looking at the documentation, that that's really what it is. It's 5 to 15 mile line heavy industrial zone. Almost anything that we think can go in there, whatever it is. So the DOE, in trying to establish an NIETC, is really failing to consider several things. One, of course, is the land. If if this goes in on the land and the land changes, it loses its productive ag, what's going on there, and they pave it over, whatever they're doing, that'll never come back, so the land changes. And along with that, the landowner's livelihood, you lose productivity, you lose your livelihood. The legacy of our families, I know a lot of us, are here for generations. Our grandchildren are fifth generation, and I'm sure a bunch of you are too. That legacy, that's quite a legacy to remember what they've gone through. And the financial resources we count on. A number of bankers have asked, okay, you lose part of your land and productivity, how are you going to pay your mortgage? Or if you need financing for operation, which a lot of us do, how are you going to qualify for that if you lose productivity that you have? And of course, the future of our local economies and communities. We lose people, we lose tax base, the school systems suffer, things change. The DOE and their private partners are really speculating with our private land and water resources without our input or permission. And water resources, I didn't really say anything much about that, but this is also part and parcel of it. They need a lot of water, even doing what they're talking about, particularly if they're talking about hydrogen power. That's a very, very thirsty kind of process. So, really, every one of the corridors will owe a debt to the DOE that will indefinitely, there's no end limit to this. They encumber our land, and they can be collected by a private company with the help of the DOE and FERC by giving them ultimate control whenever they decide to take it. So people think that a transmission line is economic development, but what the NIETC is doing is sets the stage for economic replacement. Quite different than what we have now. The economy will change. So that's what we've gathered from New Mexico and everything we've looked at. What's the situation in Colorado? That would be y'all to answer that. And there's a question we have. We'd like to know more. But let me go just real quickly and tell you what we have. We passed out in that packet there that might be helpful. Of course, the first thing we did, there's the overall map, a little bigger map than what you see, showing the corridor. And the question was asked, how do you contact? What are the links to getting any comments? This document here, it comes out of the Biden-Harris administration announces 3 high-priority areas advancing national interest electric transmission corridor. And you go in here, let's see, where does it say? There's a place for comments. Yeah, a 60-day comment period is now open. You click on that link and you get instructions it's on the 3rd page of this thing. So, and anybody go online and find this. This is what it looks like. It's just the Biden-Harris administration announces 3 high-priority areas advancing. So any of us can do that. That's where we got this. We have put together a fact sheet. Actually 2 levels. The first one is sort of a revised one. It's kind of an easier using fact sheet, a little clearer. And the second fact sheet is a longer thing that has more information for your use and information. New Mexico, there's a number of counties that are actually about 13, I think. There's 11. Well, 8. What about the south we're pushing back? Is it 8? Okay. There are 8 counties that are writing. One first thing is they're asking. It's a request for cooperating status. This happens to be Chatham County, which is south of us, and the cooperating status. New Mexico related to the National Environment Policy Act compliance for NIETC. What that does is it puts you all as a county or Chatham County on equal footing with the DOE. Saying, we have to be included in this deal in here. Whatever you're doing, we need to be in the loop. Now that's all that does is just get communication with them. It doesn't stop anything. The same county, Chatham County, has written, and you have a copy of the resolution, and where they're pushing back, it's got all the whereases and stuff like that you have to do. But they're therefore be resolved that the Board of Commissioners, Prowers County, Mexico, opposes the construction of the national interest electric transmission corridors. And then they put reasons in here. Basically, what they want to do is just stop it because we're all line in the sand, no way, you know. And you can look at that just for information. There's also, we talked about Kansas stopping in. Here's a much thicker resolution for Martin County, Kansas. This was phase 2, and you go through, it's got all the whereases, but they also have why they're opposing it in here, and which might be helpful. And they were successful in stopping it. So it's a good term for maybe what you all can do. Also, the last thing is a petition that we've circulated around town in our license, Wake County. And it states in there, you know, what the problem is. That's the last thing. And it states what the problem is, and we're deciding we're opposing this. So that's pretty well. Again, Patty and I really appreciate you allowing us to be here and talk to you all. And it's good to have the bodies here. You know, we like Dallas said, we got your back. We appreciate that. So anything we can do to help or cooperate, we'd be more than happy to. You know, we're all in this together. This goes in all summer. It's not going to stop the state money or county money. So I don't know if there are any questions or anything.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
In any of your research, have they explained why they need 5 to 15 mile
No, ma'am.
swaths?
If you look at the phase 2, the corridor was up to 120 miles wide. And you didn't see the map, but there's no explanation. You know, if you have a transmission line, well, you might think, about 200 feet or something, I don't know. I mean, it was maybe 300 yards, I don't know, these are huge. But there's no explanation. That's why we think there's much more planned than what's apparent in their verbiage and what they're saying.
And if I understood you right, there's no source of power at either end of the transmission line, but you're assuming or maybe nuclear or hydrogen producing plant?
Could be. That's speculation on our part. If I may expand a little bit on this corridor, we have, they talk about transmission lines to service renewable energy, but we've already seen in Mexico, there's already, those lines are being built that need, whatever they need to do. But we think, that this corridor is meant, and if you look at the map, and I'm sorry you can't see it, it goes Colorado all the way down, goes this way into Mexico all over White Sands. We think that what this is intended to do is link the East Coast and the West Coast with the national grid, which makes us an extension cord for the East and West Coast. It's not about servicing renewable energy projects as such. There's a much wider program here than that. So why do they need 5 miles wide or 15 miles wide? Anything can go in there. And it's written such that there's really, we didn't find any stoppage of whatever could go in there. It's just, that's why I think it's maybe, could be nuclear power, nuclear waste, we don't know.
So, and maybe this is for the Prowers County Commissioners, but doesn't this write on top of the Colorado pathways, what they're already planning? And how does the transmission lines through the private companies, Excel Energy, et cetera, there's already efforts underway for that. It looks like they're like right on top of it. Are they going to usurp those?
Well, I don't know Colorado. Dallas can actually talk to Colorado. Maybe you should. I don't know. But just real quickly, in New Mexico, that corridor goes across a number of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries. There's about 53, I think, endangered species or severely endangered species. Locating that corridor, it doesn't matter. We're just ignoring that. Dallas?
Thank you, Ed. Well, I think all of you know me, I'm Dallas May. Anytime I speak, I have to say this disclaimer first. I'm on the Parks and Wildlife Commission. I'm not speaking as a wildlife commissioner, but I'm speaking as a rancher and farmer. All of you are my neighbors. As I look out on this room, this is the heart and soul of America. Rural America which everybody takes for granted, everybody continually is attacking, this is what it's all about. So as far as the power pathways, XL power pathways, it's going to, I'll give the examples I have on our ranch. We have 4 high voltage transmission lines that go across our ranch. XL power pathways is going to come over this boundary, so that's another one. We have one that was just built, just finished last week. So there's no shortage of transmission or available transmission. When this is framed as a transmission corridor, it's anything but a transmission corridor. They use that term because that's less obtrusive, and most of us have the least amount of problem with that. A lot of my neighbors have tried and are negotiating and been successful with renewable energy leases. It's great, it's private property right, which everybody should have. But once this goes into place, all of a sudden those rights are gone. You no longer have those rights. Once the power of eminent domain is given to private for-profit companies, you and your family's legacy is gone. Because you may have the intent for one power line to come across you, but once you've given that 5 mile card and lost the protection of your land, it's perpetual. You've lost it forever. It's not for 5 years. How are you going to go to your lender whenever you have trouble paying your mortgage because some of your land has been taken out of production? How are you going to go to your lender and support the fact that you need more funds, you can't pay your operating bill because you no longer have the ability to operate part of your ranch? That's what we're talking about. And whenever we talk about this 5 mile wide zone, anywhere within that 5 miles, that could happen to you. I see some of my neighbors that have irrigation sprinklers. If you are condemned by eminent domain and they decide you need to go from point A to point B, they're going to go right across those and you're going to lose your irrigation sprinklers. You have no choice. You're giving that up. I've been the victim of condemnation. A year ago, we had to sign a stipulation for possession. We gave up part of our land for a power line to be built. Last week, that power line was completed. I can't say anything about it more than that because we're in litigation. I will tell you this, your idea of the value of your property is hugely different than any of these companies' value of your property. Once you give up your right to negotiate privately with them, you then are at the mercy of what they decide because their definition of the way they can determine fair market value is totally different than what all of us perceive as fair market value. But that's basically what I have to say. I mean, I'm so thrilled to see all of you here. Ed and Patty are doing this all on their own. They drove up here to do this to help us. And I would hope we can come up with enough support. We have a great county commission, I think, that is supportive of us. Let's not let people extract all the resources out of our part of the world to make the municipal areas more profitable. So let's protect our rights. And if anybody has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer, but that's basically what I have to tell you.
And we agree with that 100%. Yeah.
Question?
Yes, I'm from Prowers County, and there's a transmission line that comes close to Santa Creek up there, which is just right east of my place. Is it going to tie into that line?
If you look at the map, I haven't been able to see a real detailed map, but as this line is drawn very specifically, it catches the substation out on Road SS, basically at Road, 12 and SS. It catches that substation and then it jogs towards the new, what they call the May Valley substation. So it's encompassing all that. The purpose is to bring all of that into this corridor. And if anybody's negotiating for renewable energy leases or has the option to do that right now, I will tell you my opinion is once this goes through, even before it goes through, you'll lose that ability because all of a sudden the companies that you're working with realize that they don't have to come negotiate with you. They will just wait and come take it from you.
If I could add a little bit to what Don said, we're from the northeast part of New Mexico, and there's some renewable energy projects there. Next year is one of them, and I forget the other. But we asked them, do you know about this? They didn't have clues. They said, we're not planning on this. We don't want to deal with the DOE. And if you look at the map, if you go to that website, the announcement, this thing I showed you, you can go in there in this announcement here, phase 3. That's just above the comment link. If you go in there and you look at the potential, you click on that, you go in, and then in the lower left-hand corner, what opens up, it says potential NIETCs. You click on that, and there's a geographical map, and you can expand it. But if you look at that map, it shows all existing power lines in red, and then it shows this grid coming through. Well, if you look, it goes right up to the Mexico-Texas line in part of Oklahoma into Colorado. And if you look at that, it will not connect with any of those things in Texas, because Texas has a law that the power can come in, but it can't go out, and it can't go across, or it can go either way. It can go in. If Patty, get me straight with that.
You can't, if power is just going through, if you wanna build an extension cord in Texas, you can't do it.
Right.
If power stops there, you can. If it's coming out of Texas, you can, but
Right.
you can't use it as an extension.
Right, thank you for that, thanks. But she's done most of this research, so she got, and so they're not connected to that grid, Texas isn't, and that's why Texas pushed back real hard. And so the lines, the 5 lines that are being developed right now in New Mexico, they have no plans to connect to this grid. That's why we think that it's just making an extension cord east coast to west coast. Yes, sir.
One thing I would add, they talk about concentration of lines, trying to get these all in one area where it's less obtrusive, less damaging to the environment. Nothing could be further from the truth. None of these companies want to condense lines. They want a line every half mile or mile apart. They don't want them close together. So once you're subject to this, it's not like these lines are going to be put in a 200-foot wide corridor. They're going to be put across your property. The example I give is this. Most of them want a 150-foot wide easement. So you take that 150-foot wide, a mile across your property. That's going to destroy, if you have irrigation sprinklers, if you have cabin barns, whatever you have, you've lost that. You can no longer probably get finance on some of that because this easement will have dominion over your surface rights. Once that's granted, you've lost your rights. So whenever that's done on a mile, 150 foot wide, that's 18.18 acres. You are going to get paid pennies on the dollar for 18.18 acres to take a mile of your property. That's the trouble with all this. Another thing that's not being mentioned is data centers. You all hear about data centers and the need for them, and they're going in, the huge amount of power they need to have. It's just not beginning, but data centers are starting to come into rural America, and that could very well be the disposition of what we're talking here. All of it is being portrayed as economic development, but for private landowners, it's economic destruction. It doesn't help any of us economically. What helps us to be able to negotiate fairly with the willing participant, not to be condemned through eminent domain and have to take it away from you.
Excuse me, are you saying data centers?
Pardon me?
Are you saying data centers?
Data center, yes ma'am.
For what?
That's what he said.
For what?
Data centers for,
Artificial intelligence.
yeah, everything's being used right now. Amazon, Google, anything that needs massive amounts of power. There are stories, if you want to look it up, data centers are in short supply and they want to be built in rural areas where there's easily accessible power because they take a huge amount of power.
But they don't take a lot of footprint, they just take a lot of power.
The power to get to those, this actually, is another thing that has to be mentioned. This 5 to 50 mile wide corridor would allow for the construction of power generation. So who knows what they have? Whenever they say that other uses, it can be used for other uses, that's what I started off by saying. It's everything except transmission.
I'd like to just ask, maybe somebody in this room knows, but that IA, what they're coming up with that IA, that takes a tremendous amount of power. More power than I think if anybody knows. I'd like to hear what the numbers are as far as what that takes.
I think we've been talking about it some through Tri-State and through the Colorado River Electric, but a small data center would be 25 megawatts. And from that, you'll go up to 80 megawatts per site. So it will be large. For example, the power plant that was built in Lamar was a 40 megawatt. So this is gonna be greater than what this would be as far as usage.
That's what's been portrayed to me, that if a data center was built, say for example, if there was a data center built in southeast Colorado, there would not be enough power to power it and our residents. So anything happens like that requires a new source of power. And in this 5 to 15 mile wide zone, all bets are off. Now that wouldn't be economically viable. I don't see how that would be good for our community. It would be destructive because it would take all this productive land out. But, you know, the fact of the matter is it takes that productive land out of our hands, puts it in federal control. And then, you had mentioned this on one of the calls. In New Mexico, there was the whole tech site it was actually given a permit to store spent nuclear fuel in New Mexico. And this was going to be a billionaire from India that was developing it. So they got the permit from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to build this. Well, people like Ed and Patty got involved and got the permit removed. That's in the Supreme Court right now. But all of that, once this transmission order goes in and federal control is given, none of us have control over anything. Once that happens, we lost our control.
I might say one other thing. Let me make a comment just real quick. I was asked this morning, you think we can stop the DOE? And I said, we have experience that you can. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but in 2017, the DOE wanted to put boreholes 3 miles deep and down into the granite to bury high-level nuclear defense waste. That was about 2.5 miles from our south fence. Well, immediately, the value of our land went this way. There was a neighbor who was doing an estate appraisal, and the appraiser said, well, I don't know what it's going to be worth, but it's going to be worth a lot less, if this goes in. Well, we fought, and we did things like county commissions, maybe talk to them, the other county commissions. You guys made resolutions against it. People wrote into them. We had petitions, and they pulled out. We actually beat them. They stopped. But here they come again, and this corridor actually goes right over the area south of our ranch where they wanted to put in these boreholes. We don't know if that's part of it or not, but it certainly makes us suspicious. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it sure looks like a conspiracy to me. I don't know. And it's something to think about. I'm sorry, Jim, I had a question.
I guess I'm not real familiar with eminent domain, but are there different types of that, or is this a special one, or they get blanket authority to use it for any use? Or I was always under the impression that it was for specific use.
Well, you have more experience with this.
Well, there are many different kinds of, I'm no expert at all. Sadly, I'm getting to be more of an expert on it, but I'm not. But yeah, there are different uses, but what it comes down to is public necessity. If the project meets public necessity, it fits most of the qualifications for condemnation. And maybe there's a defense against it, I don't know what it is.
Dallas, you said that you had a piece of property that was condemned. So when they condemn that, do they condemn a corridor for the power line, which ends up being just the size of the easement that they want? Or how big is it, and what is the difference, if anybody knows, between condemnation and eminent domain? Are they really the same thing by two different names?
I use the terms simultaneously. I don't know if there's a difference for us. Our condemnation, as I said, I can't say too much. I don't even really want to get into it, but it's very specific. It's specific for the area taken, but what's not specific is for the uses that can be done. And it's really pointed out, and like this is transmission, but allows for multiple uses. And that's where the details get really bad for us, because those multiple uses may prevent you from grazing cattle. They may allow them to build a fence or force you to just keep the cattle off of it. Like I said about irrigation sprinklers. Imagine this going across some of the Prowers County's irrigated country that's covered in irrigation sprinklers. If that's what they do 5 mile corridor, that will take precedence over what's going on in that land. And if you have a mortgage and you're trying to have a legacy to pass on to your family, that may be the end.
I just have to go. I want to thank you for coming and informing us. To me, it's ironic that we just learn of all this. You know, we don't know, and we have 2 days now to give comments. So to me, that just speaks of red flags, so.
It's very offensive. I will tell you this, I don't know in this room about before I did. Anyway, Patty had been working on it since June.
June of last year.
But that's the trouble with our rural privacy and the way we do things, you know, we don't know. I found out about it the 7th of January because our ranch is under conservation. We have it that way so we can protect it. We don't have to develop them on it. But the land trust who has the conservation easement on our ranch notified me the 7th of January that this was being done. I started talking to everybody I could in the state. I found not one person was aware of this. Not one person. But every answer I got was, well, it was posted in the Federal Register. Who in this room reads the Federal Register? Who reads it every day? So that's the only notice that was required.
I know we can go on and on like this, and that's fine, but I'd like to ask yourself, the county commissioners, is there something on this public comment? Because if you're expecting all of us to go out there and find this on the computer and then write a public comment on an individual basis, that usually does not happen. Is it better to have them draft something and we could sign something to send in as a group? Does that carry just as much weight as a individual comment would? If we all did it individually, if you could address that.
I've been told that the more comments, the better.
The individual comments.
Individual comments.
So we need to have something maybe in writing from county commissions that we can put in, we can go to our computers or send that in. It's just a little bit of change so it comes from you. But the wording and the verbiage for that, I'd like to see something put up right now. Would you suggest that?
Well, yeah, and they need to be individual.
But we could do it, something individual, something that we have a basis to go by, but what we need to comment on.
Yeah.
I assign to it.
I have seen there are some people who are willing to make a form public comment letter, as long as you can always edit it to suit yourself. But there are a couple out there, I don't know how we get them into the public domain, but what Ed said is right. Rather than many people signing on one comment letter, that will go in as one post comment. So we need to have multiple comments.
And again, I say, I don't have one. I'd like to get something in there. I don't have one in the commission, a basic comment that we can go ahead and put our name to it or our situation and then send that forward. I think it would be a lot better for us to do that.
The commissioners are working on a resolution we have in place to be approved this afternoon. We have some amendments possibly. We got a couple more resolutions last night. We have a resolution posted. We're really concerned with possibly adding some stuff to it. Don worked on it till late last night. But we have 2 more resolutions coming in this morning. Kind of looking at those. I know the commissioners talked about having a couple corrections on that. As soon as we get that posted this afternoon, we can get it on our website. We can post the contact number for Prowers Energy. We can get that on our website and get it out for something you can look at. And we can work on a letter too.
We could repost it too.
The unfortunate thing is, we reached out to our state representatives, state senators, they knew nothing about this. When we found out, we reached out to them that exact day, they knew nothing about it. Colorado Department of Energy, they reached out to them. They're not admitting that they knew anything about it, but there's some real concerns there that they didn't have some idea this was happening. By the time we got known about it, they'd already had their public comment, that our public webinars. It had already passed the date by the time we found out about it. So this thing was totally hidden from a lot of people. If you look at the resolutions to Kansas and anything that's sent out at this point in time, it was hid in all those states, and it was pulled out at the last minute, so we will get that information out today.
We'd be happy to share that too if you want to send it to me.
Share it through the Prowers Journal online.
So the link will be on your website.
Yeah, and I'll put it on our Facebook
So
too.
Ron, I guess you're working with Kiowa and Baxter County Commissioners also in conjunction, or will that be all individually? Or?
Baxter County Commissioners have a resolution out also. I don't know if they have approved it yet. I think they
Did not, I did not see that, whether or not they had approved it yet. We just got a draft of it, and it looked pretty good.
And I know Kiowa County was working on a resolution. Yes, ma'am.
I understand the value of getting these public comments out, but I'm gonna guess that even if there was 100 or 1,000 comments, that they poo-poo. So what? I'm asking the commissioners, have you reached out to our United States Senators, Hickenlooper and Bennett? Have you reached out to the governor? Have you reached out to Phil Weiser? And one of the things I was impressed, I stumbled across, Phil Weiser recently was defending Julesburg, Colorado, Sedgwick County on an eminent domain issue. And he got behind him and was very adamant that he was going to stand behind the private landowners against this eminent domain. So I guess I'm just wondering, above and beyond the comment period on February 14th, can you take specific actions to get the governor and our U.S. senators and Phil Weiser involved, and also ask those people in authority to invite the DOE to come to Prowers County and have a public hearing or a public comment question and answer, so we can organize a couple thousand people to stand there and say, we don't want this.
We can work on that. I know we reached out to our state reps and our senators to write letters. Yes, they have been. They're working on letters. We were told they were working on letters moving forward with that. We will get information to the governor advisor today.
Commissioner, as you saw this morning, and with our guests still on, we have reached out to our delegation in this area, and of those, we've been able to respond. Also on your resolution, that includes, and you'll notice in the resolution itself, that a copy of this resolution and supporting documents will go to the governor, our state representatives, all our delegation, and some others. So I think we're on the right track for getting all those people involved.
And I just want to tell you, in the last 2 weeks, we have been flooded with information. I don't know how many emails this board has read. There's probably 300 or 400 pages that we have been going through. We're just getting bombarded with what we've asked for. On Dallas has sent us a lot of stuff. We've got it out of Kansas. We've read through all of that. It's not like we haven't been working on it. It's such a short term that they hid it from all of us that we really got aggressive. And if you see, Congresswoman Goldhart has really stepped up and sent that letter forward and kind of got ahead of it. So I think we pushed forward some, but we all need to stay on the same page until the 14th and then watch this very closely.
It's gonna take all of us to fight it.
We want everybody to know that it's great that we got the information. If they have any more information, to get it to us. Because we want to learn as much about it as we can, and we want to get the information out in the county so that you guys know what's going on too. Our biggest disappointment is, as this developed, they never came to the counties. They never came to the state. It's all been hidden. And if they take the domain, it also takes the power away from the county boards. So land use board doesn't have any power. So they can do whatever they want on that land, and that really bothers.
I guess a few things. I know a lot of people have lived around here a lot of years, and you probably all remember that Buffalo Commons, the National Heritage Area, and the Pinyon Canyon expansion thing. And it seems to me that we have different groups all claiming the same territory. But there's a reason for that, is in my opinion. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Kit Carson and stopped at Shep's Cafe whenever it was still open. And they would charge you for a glass of water. And I asked the guy why, and I know that was his trigger to get into story. And his story was because they have high uranium levels and they have to have a filtration system in this town, and they charge them so much for water there. Well, the local municipal water samples between Syracuse and Coolidge and Garden City and Kit Carson and all the way up to Nunn, Colorado have tested high in uranium. And that's not a coincidence, because Witcher Ranch had been bought out not too long ago by a group, and one of the owners there, Phil Breitbach, is on the board of the DOE. One of his things is uranium mining and disposal of uranium. This area is mineral rich, and a lot of people don't realize it. There's a reason that they wanted the expedited environmental reviews, you know, for a power line from nowhere to nowhere. They had a big protest in Nunn, Colorado. It was called Nunn Glow, and those people protested when I worked up there, and I saw the exploration and mining of uranium in those areas. They'll bore a central well and have like 6 wells around it, and they pump a leaching agent into the 6 wells, and they suction it out of the center well. And this is familiar for me. I've seen this go on in other areas. It's not, you know, it's not new. In 2008, Wes McKinley showed soil samples of unusually high concentrations of uranium at 4 sites on the Pinyon Canyon expansion project. There's a reason that they're asking for 15 miles wide with the, you know, phase 2 going up to, what did you say, 120 miles?
120.
That's the same map that they've tried for every one of those, the Buffalo Commons Heritage Area and the Pinyon Canyon thing. They want this land, and they want it for a reason. And with the people that are into the mining and exploration and disposal of uranium moving into the area from Georgia, and actually he was in North Carolina doing a thing because they were disposing of uranium in North Carolina, and I think it was 2014, this thing said. There's a reason he's here. It's not for the wonderful climate and the wonderful winters and stuff. You know, they're here for a reason. And they've been here for a while, and they've tried and they've tried and they've tried, and they put these things in front of people that voters feel sorry for, you know. But thankfully, the voters have felt, you know, placed in their hearts for the farmer and the rancher and stuff like that to not vote us off the land. But they're going to keep trying, and you know, this guy moving here buying a, what was it, multi-million-dollar ranch in the area, he's here for a reason. And they're going to keep trying. They'll probably try all my lifetime. So
Just don't let the smoke screen of transmission cross. Because as I said, it's anything except transmission. If it has a nexus to energy, such as uranium mining, I'm not saying that, but any nexus to energy is going to qualify into this quarter. So don't let transmission lines be the smoke screen that keep you from opposing these. There's no, if there's a need for a transmission line, it will get put in. Through private negotiation, it will get put in. That's just the way. I want critical infrastructure to be built. All of us do. I like to go home at night and have electricity in my house. So we're pro that. We're just not pro losing all our rights. I want to reiterate what Alan said. We have got to get comments in before Friday. It doesn't matter if it's a 1 paragraph thing. If you can get help on where to send that, the more comments that go in, that's how they measure. It's not by the length or the articulate comments that put in. It's the number. It's the quantity.
And difference.
Yeah.
Different, not just one letter. I can say something to this lady here. Part of the reason we get comments in before Friday is to give standing for the court case later. I mean, that's what we found. We mentioned Holcheck. That's what happened with that. People got their comments in, and we actually ended up being a small part of that because we put in comments. And that they now have before the Supreme Court, because they had standing, they got the comments in. Because if you don't do it during the comment period, you go to a court and say, well, you didn't protest it then, so you know you don't have any standing. So the standing is really the important thing to get. Patty.
We do have a letter that a former state land commissioner from New Mexico wrote. It's got the address and it's got the Federal Register number, I guess, and it's got an outline that you could use to fill in. I know you have a copy in that packet, we gave each one of you a copy of that. And on the back, there are bullet points of things that you could include. But it's not comprehensive by any means. So we've written, I think we're on 31 points now. We're just trying to think of everything that could come up in a court, so that it's mentioned in the comments, and then hopefully it can go forward.
Was it best to do it US mail or email or?
You can do it email. Email's fine. Just get it in before the end of the 14th.
Speaking of which, I did read something recently that email or online comments are read immediately, but if you do mail it in, it takes 6 weeks to get through the anthrax checking. So if it sits there, it doesn't.
But at least you get it in.
Yes. The question, Dallas, on the land trust and the conservation easements, and since there's abundant conservation easements throughout Prowers County, how are the land trusts, are they helping to stand, also put in public comments? And how, in the end of the day, would the land trust also be in the fight against the eminent domain?
It's a good question. I can only speak for our land trust. They have submitted comments already. They've been really proactive on it. As far as defending property rights, they will go as far as they can go. They've been admirable in that. So yes, one of the benefits, and I know people have different thoughts on conservation easements, but a conservation easement is not giving the land to the government. It's protecting it in its current state in perpetuity. And those land trusts take on the responsibility of doing that. So they have the responsibility of protecting it, and they will defend against this in any way they can. The trouble is Colorado condemnation law. It is totally biased against landowners.
So they'd be using
Wait,
Colorado
back up and say that again, could you, Dallas?
What part?
The first part of what you just said.
Colorado condemnation law is against landowners. It's pro-development, it's against landowners.
Okay, thank you.
So will they be using Colorado condemnation laws or federal?
Well, I don't know. I presume once this goes in, I think it becomes a federal, I don't know.
But they will go through the normal process. Say the developer wants to do something, they'll go through the normal process of what you would do now. But if the state says no, then the DOE says yes. That's the difference.
So we do need the governor and the attorney general involved
Exactly.
ASAP.
Yeah.
And is there any way is there a connection to ask them to get a public comment in before Friday?
That's on our plan today.
It is specifically mentioned in there that if there is a project in the state that has not been approved or has language for, I think, a year, this, in the case, once this order is approved, as a project that the state has denied or that has language to negotiation for a year, automatically gets approved through this process. So you've lost all your rights. You can try it. You can try to negotiate for a while.
So I guess I'm confused. If the state says no and the government overrides them, how did Texas and Kansas stop?
They have a lot of political power, a lot of people. And the DOE, frankly, doesn't want the bad publicity, I think, and so they're going for they think the low-hanging fruit. Because, we didn't know about it, we're not that many population, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So, is the reason we have this proposed corridor going down southeast Colorado and then into New Mexico, is that they just scooted over from Kansas and Texas, and we're the next guy on the...
Well, yes and no. If you look at the Phase 2 map, in New Mexico and Colorado, there were two things that kind of went like this on the map, and one of them extended over into, it was actually a 5-mile wide corridor. It went into Oklahoma, Texas, to Missouri, all the way over. And so they just cut that off. And so they combined these two things that went like that into this one. It's really what happened. So, it's all part of the process. If they get any of this in, then it's like a nose under the tent, pretty soon you got the whole camel. They get any sets of precedent. So they can continue to expand, and they say that they'll revisit they have to reserve the right to revisit other areas.
And right now, there are 3 of these corridors in the United States. We're not the only one. There's Nebraska and the Dakotas and somewhere around there.
There's one back in the east somewhere.
Canadian, Pennsylvania.
Well-
There was actually in 2021, there's actually 10 of these corridors set up in the United States. And people have protested them, and people have fought them, and it's down to 3 now.
Well, Colorado voted a few years ago to produce more electricity by renewables. We've got to meet that demand by law before too long. So I'm wondering if that's part of the reason that it's picked to go down this part of Colorado and into New Mexico, is because as a state, we already voted that, hey, we're in for this deal. So we're like, well, they can't be opposed to it. Let's put it right over there where they voted their.
But doesn't Colorado Pathways already meet, isn't that, I mean, that kind of defies the logic.
Excess Power Pathways line is for that very purpose, to bring energy from the eastern plains to the municipal areas of Colorado. It's the whole purpose. And
And they haven't given us information of what it's gonna supply. There's no information to us.
Well, the current administration had indicated that he's gonna repeal a lot of the renewable acts that Biden had passed. Is there gonna be any help there?
Unclear, we hope so, but we can't count on that. You know, you never know. But part of the issue is that this Infrastructure Jobs Act thing, that's in law. So you have to go through Congress to repeal that law, actually. But there's the issue to us is that, as this white paper said, there's an overstepping of federal authority here. And there's a couple of things that have happened in the last, I'm no lawyer, but I just know it by name. There's the repeal of the Chevron doctrine, that the Chevron doctrine was is if a Congress enacts a law and then the DOE makes a regulation and the regulation goes past the intent of the law, well, up till now, the courts would just agree with the one made the regulation, figured they'd do best. But that was Chevron, I don't remember quite the name. But now they say, well, if they exceed the law, what the law of Congress intended, then you can't do that. And to us, this is part of that. Congress passed a law, and the resource paper said they exceeded by regulation, but they do. So the regulation is the excess. Patty?
No, that's, I talked to a person at FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Spent a lot of time with her, asking questions. She answered, and she finally said, a lot of this hasn't been tested in court. So at least the DOE, at least FERC knows that, that this is iffy, and I think that that's what the landmark research paper was about.
And so that's where we got to get comments that get standing in court, because it may, any of us individuals, we don't have enough money to do that, but collectively down this quarter, we might be able to surmount a pretty good kickback.
What I think is very important, don't let this be turned into anti-renewable energy. This is not anti-renewable, our efforts are not anti-renewable energy. Many people in this room have leases and are hoping for renewable energy projects to come to them. That's important. But this is not developing those, this is taking your rights away. Because, for example, if you have one of those projects within this quarter that you're negotiating right now, do you honestly think you're going to get more once they get the power to take it from you, rather than them trying to negotiate fair market with you? So this isn't anti-renewable energy. It's exactly the opposite. Eastern plains of Colorado are ripe for development. And we don't need the federal government to come in and take land away from us, and instead of paying people fair market for that, or what they've done, we need to keep it as it is, and be able to negotiate those rights on our own. I think it's very important to note that, because I think that's what this is going to get turned into, that we're trying to stop renewable energy. I'm not. I know Ed and Patty are not. We're trying to help.
So this is changing the subject a little bit maybe, but there were a lot of people who went through a process with the state of Colorado and the feds in the conservation easement wreck that we had here years ago. And Jelaine and I and a group of people, there is a law called the Law of Coordination. And it was passed in 63, 83, something like that. It's a very little known law. And what it says is that whenever the federal government is proposing a job or something like this, if it's going to affect your county socially or financially, the county commissioners, the local commissioners can apply this law of coordination. And what it says is that the federal government has to coordinate with you. You have a tremendous amount of power.
What was the law?
It's just, you'll have to look up law of coordination. It's been so long ago, part of it is gone from my memory. But it is a fabulous tool, and we worked really hard to get the then commissioners, and there's a process you have to go through to put this thing into place. We tried to get the commissioners to go through it at that time, and they were all on board until the then lawyer said, nah, you guys don't want to get mixed up in this deal, so they said, no, we don't want to do it. But trust me, it is a process that you need to look into, and I can't tell you how to do it because it's a technical thing, but it is a tremendous tool.
I still have some information about it and how it works, and I'll try to get that to the commissioners. It is effective, yes.
In your packet, you have an example of just what this gentleman is talking about in Chavez County. It's called the Cooperating Agency Agreement, and you have a copy of it there. There's others we could, that's it.
Yes, but don't get cooperation confused with coordination. They are two different things.
Yes.
So you're looking for coordination. And Jelaine she still will have that stuff.
Unfortunately.
Does the coordination, just a question for my benefit, does the coordination mean they have to keep you in the loop for what's going on? Is that what that means?
They have to coordinate. One government agency has to coordinate with another government agency, which the commissioners or
That's
feds.
good to know. Thank you.
And they have to come to the table, and which is your opportunity to invite the Department of Energy.
And that is in our resolution?
That was the biggest thing about it, is you didn't have to go to them.
They have to come to you.
They have to come here to this courthouse and they got to deal with you. Anybody that you ask or request to come that is in this process, they got to come to you. You don't have to pack up your stuff and go to Denver or wherever they might be at. They got to come to you.
That's why we're in the position we are today, is because they didn't want us involved in this.
And that's what we're pushing in this resolution is county involvement.
Right.
Because there's been none whatsoever. We're pushing that. And we're being careful because we don't want to make it look like we're against transmission lines.
Right.
Because we're not.
And I get that. And I thank you, Dallas, for to specify that.
And I presume the county attorney is involved in writing this resolution?
And is that Rose?
Is that?
County attorney, is that Rose?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One thing, while Ed's looking this up, I'll say, I've been in contact with Senator Bennett's office with his staff. They're very involved. They want to know, because what's the immediate need? Well, the immediate need is what Representative Brewer said, to put off this comment period first. That's the first thing. That's the deadline that's coming at us. Let's extend that comment period and buy ourselves some time, because 3 weeks isn't enough time to organize what we're trying to do. So to me, that makes sense, and hopefully that will happen.
And I didn't hear what she said, all of it. She was trying to extend the deadline? Is that right? Okay.
That's what we're asking for, just a simple extension of time. Just like Alan's talking about, how do all of us get comments submitted in 3 days? I know what happened for me, I don't get into that.
So, dumb question, who has more political power, the Bobert or the Senator, Hickenlooper and Bennett?
Well, I tell you what, I'm representing the growers, I'm straight to the Secretary of the Department of Energy, that's pretty powerful.
So in Bennett's office, have they offered to
Yes,
do
they
the same? Okay.
I think the head of the USDA, Rollins is her name, would be another one to contact, because a lot of this is ag land and, USDA. She's a Texas A&M graduate, so she knows, grew up on a ranch, so she would be sympathetic.
assistant commissioner, and I have been speaking with them on a state level as well, and I plan to continue and take these comments forward as well. So we'll be represented on a state level with the Department of Agriculture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I want to thank you for all coming. I really appreciate all your concerns. We're going to be working on, Don, you have something on the resolution?
I was gonna say, do you wanna discuss some of that
That's
now?
fine.
Okay. Commissioners, I have copies that highlight the changes we put in, myself and, county attorney late yesterday evening.
We'd like some information, like coordination versus cooperation.
We can go over
I'm
the-
just doing it from memory, and she'll have it in writing.
Thank you.
I didn't get your name.
Ed Hughes.